Hello and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's ranking Star Trek's Chief Engineers. This is a Patreon requested video requested by patron Carrie091. Thank you so much for supporting the channel and for all those who support the channel on Patreon. Very much appreciated. It helps my channel grow or keep going, as they say. Anyway, so in this video I will be ranking all the chief engineers from Star Trek. So I am choosing one chief engineer per show. I'm not doing like I've seen some other countdowns or ranking of positions that have multiple characters from one show. I'm not going to have like Lieutenant Carey from Voyager, or was it Logan from Next Generation, who was in that one episode where he's being a dick to LaForge back in the first season when Next Generation used to have like rotating chief engineers. I'm not doing anything like that. One per show, and one for each show of the Star Trek shows out there. So that includes shows where there's not necessarily a chief engineer, like maybe there's a chief of operations, or like Stamets, who's like the scientist who runs the spore drive. He's not technically the chief engineer, but he's functionally the chief engineer for that show, so I'm counting him. That sort of thing. So I'll be ranking 6 characters, so the ones that are eligible that I will be ranking in as who's the best engineer will be Montgomery, Scotty, Geordi LaForge, Chief Miles Edward O'Brien, B'Elanna Torres, Commander Charles Tucker III, or Trip, and Lieutenant Commander Paul Stamets. So that's one for the original series, one for Next Generation, one for Deep Space Nine, one for Voyager, Enterprise, and Discovery. So the animated series, like, that's also Scotty. Same with the movies, so won't count that. And as far as Picard goes, they don't really have a chief engineer. I am definitely not going to include that emergency hologram engineer. No, sorry, but no. And Lower Decks has yet to come out at the time of the recording of this video. But even if it does, it's not really focused on the main crews, my understanding. So these are the 6 engineers that I will be ranking. This is my personal opinion. However, as requested by Carrie091, I'm not ranking them on which character I personally like better. More of who has the best abilities? Who is the best chief engineer? If I was running a starship, who would I want down in that engine room, keeping things running? And who do I think is most capable? But as I said, my opinion, I know many people will rank this probably completely different than how I'm ranking it, but I was asked who I think the most capable chief engineer is, so this is what I'm going to choose. Now, first of all, I want to start off by saying that all 6 of these chief engineers are really great. Like, they're really proficient. They're all great engineers. Like, I would be proud to have any of them down in the engine room. I think they're all amazing, so it actually made it really difficult to rank these because they're all great. I don't think there's a bad one in the bunch, personally. So, yeah, it's kind of like splitting hairs, and I know some people are going to be very strongly disagree with where I land some of these, but anyway, let's get started. Let's start with my number 6, and that is Lieutenant Commander Charles Tucker III, Trip, from Enterprise. Now, to be clear, as I said, I'm not ranking this based on which character I like the most, because Trip would definitely be the last if that were the case, and he would. I would say that He's not a good character. Any of those familiar with my channel know that I don't like this character at all, and so he would be the clear last. I was a bit hesitant to put him last on this list because I'm trying to leave my personal bias out of it, because it's not about which character I personally like, is who's the most capable engineer. And Commander Tucker, to be fair, is a very capable engineer. I mean, he was the chief engineer on the very first Warp 5 ship, like Starfleet's very first ship, and he helped create the engine, he helped test it, he helped get it going. He was very reliable for Archer, so much so when Enterprise was on a mission to save Earth from the Xindi, Archer was willing, he needed Trip so badly in order to accomplish this mission that he was willing to grow a clone that would die in 6 days, and when the clone found a way to keep living, Archer made him, basically killed him anyway, because just so they could keep Trip alive, because that's how desperate he needed Commander Tucker. And also, not to mention, at the end of that Xindi conflict, when they discovered there were these sphere builders from the future that were basically trying to destroy the whole galaxy and make it inhabitable, not just for humans, but dozens of humanoid races, Commander Tucker basically saved everyone. He was the one who managed to destroy the sphere in time when the sphere builders were actively going around the ship trying to stop them. So he's actually a very accomplished engineer. But here's the reason why I put him at the bottom of the list, because as I said, they're all accomplished engineers. They're all great engineers. But so I had to decide which one would be the least capable out of all these great engineers. And here's the thing about Tucker. He's a great engineer. There's no denying that. He knows all about warp engines. He knows what they need. He's very creative in finding solutions to whatever problem Enterprise come up with. But part of being a great engineer is being a good Starfleet officer as well. And part of some of the attributes that are necessary to being a good Starfleet officer is common sense. And I'm sorry, but Commander Tucker has no common sense. He is basically an idiot. I mean, outside of his genius for the engine room, as far as common sense goes, he's not very smart. He's has very poor diplomatic skills, such in the case where he almost caused an incident with another alien because they had 3 sexes and a cogenitor, and he was too dumb to understand how to handle this in a diplomatic way. And other instances where Commander Tucker just goes straight head on into incidents without thinking things through, and basically causes a lot of mayhem. And on top of that, I find that the Enterprise crew in general, and this is one of the issues I had with this show, are pretty incompetent. And I know that the show is trying to portray the very first humans in space so they don't have the experience that the other Starfleet officers have. But I talked about that in my review of that shit, that I think they went overboard with it to the fact where even modern day scientists and geniuses of this era would be smarter than those portrayed on Enterprise. And so, yeah, common sense has to play into it, so therefore Trip is at the bottom of my list. Now, let me get into my number 5, which I know is going to be my most controversial pick, and that is Montgomery Scotty, who let me pause for a second so you can do your gasp in horror, because I know most people would have Scotty at number 1, and probably everyone is expecting him to be at either number 1 or 2, maybe 3, but 5. How dare you? Well, here's the thing. Okay, because I had to give this a lot of thought. Because again, I'm not judging it on which character I like the best. I'm judging it on engineering skill. And you might say, well, Mark, Scotty is the most skillful of them all. He was able to, like, when the ship was plowing towards that planet and it was going to die because the engines got stalled, he managed to save them in the nick of time by doing this this crazy maneuver, and he was able to get in the Doomsday Machine. He was able to finally get this other ship's engines, that ship was like completely derelict and destroyed. He was able to get them running, and he's done some amazing things, and he's really pulled through for Kirk and the crew. Like, he managed to, in Star Trek 3, he managed to get the Enterprise so automated that only 6 people could run it, and he was recognized as one of the best engineers in Starfleet, so much so they wanted him on the newest, most advanced ship, the Excelsior. And I won't deny any of that. And as I said, like, all of these engineers are extremely accomplished. But here's the thing with Scotty. The way he describes it, when he has his estimated times of repair, he says it will take 8 hours or whatever, just as an example. And the captain will be like, well, I don't have 8 hours, so I'll do it in 4. And he does it in 4, but really, and as he revealed, he's lying. It won't actually take 8 hours. He knows that the captain's going to ask for a shorter amount of time, so he makes something up. He makes it up. He says, oh, it's going to be 8 hours, but really it's only going to take 2. He's just lying. And so when he does it in 2, everyone's like, oh my God, what a miracle worker. He was able to do it in 2 hours instead of 8, but really, he knew it would only take 2 hours in the first place. He's lying. So in other words, he's a fraud! I'm sorry. Scotty's a fraud! He lies to say, oh, this is going to take much longer than it's really going to take. Now, again, I'm not saying he's a terrible engineer, because as I just stated, there are examples of him being a great engineer, but his greatness is exaggerated because he purposely misleads people into thinking that the situation is worse than it would be, and I'm sorry, that is why I had to rank him a bit lower on this list. Anyway, let me move over to my number 4, and that's going to be Paul Stamets from Discovery. Now, Stamets, again, he's not technically the chief engineer, but he's like the one that fills their role on the show where they have an engineering problem, they go to him. He's basically in charge of the spore drive, which, of course, that's a huge accomplishment in on its own to create this spore drive that's able to travel vast distances over time. But more than that, he has shown himself capable in a pinch when Discovery had their engineering issues that they needed fixing right away. And moreover, like, the reason why I had to put him a bit higher than Scotty is because he had that strength of character, which I think is a very important attribute for a Starfleet officer to have. That he, in the situation where the first officer who had taken command, Saru, was torturing a sentient being, a tardigrade, in order just to make the ship go, and enforcing this painful procedure on the sentient being against their will. Stamets was willing to stand up for that, and instead he was able to take the pain himself. Like, not necessarily sacrifice himself, but he was willing to endure the pain in order to spare the sentient being, which shows strong caliber of character. And also, using the spore drive by Albert having himself be the instrument that made the spore drive go. Also, he subjected himself to a lot of painful scenarios, like the case where they had to do like 130 jumps or some shit. It was really painful for him, but he was willing to do it in order to help his crew. But the reason why he's at number 4, not higher, is because he's also a bit of a dick. He was a bit, like, rude and snarky to his fellow crewmates, which, I'm not having that. But anyway, so now we'll get into my number 3 favorite engineer from Star Trek, and that is Geordi LaForge. And yes, this is another one. People are like, alright, you don't have Scotty at number 1, therefore Geordi has to be at number 1. Well, sorry. He's at number 3. And again, LaForge, extremely talented, extremely effective engineer. You definitely want him in your engine room. He's able to really pull out miracles when you need it, such as when Enterprise was trapped in this energy-sucking booby trap, where it seems like they're completely screwed. LaForge was able to come up with a solution that the other ships didn't manage to come up with, and managed to get Enterprise out of there in one piece. And when there was like an alien, like space baby attached to the Enterprise, sucking its energy out, LaForge managed to come up with a solution for that as well. And it's just, all in all, he manages to pull through and keep those, Warp 9 engines going, and is really good at maintaining them. But here's the thing about LaForge and why he didn't rank a bit higher. He whines a lot. I'm sorry. And here's the thing. Getting back to the whole estimated times, when Captain Picard's like, "Oh, you have 8 hours," or when LaForge is like, "Oh, it'll take 8 hours," and Picard's like, "No, you have 4." He's just like, blah, blah, blah. He just whines like, "Fine, blah blah." Now he does do it, which you could say, see, that means he's a good engineer, but I don't think so, because he's just giving in to the captain, and he's just complaining a lot, and he's not standing up for himself, and he's really, and you see him whining. It's like, we only have 4 hours to do this, blah, blah, blah. And also, when, Jellicoe came on board and was the captain of the Enterprise, he was just whining, complaining, like, he's working us too hard, I can't meet his expectations, I don't like him, someone's got to tell him to back off, I can't stand Jellicoe, he's not giving me enough time, blah, 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 whine. And the same thing when Kern was the first officer of the Enterprise for that brief amount of time. He's like, Kern's being unreasonable, I can't get this time. So he just whines a lot. Therefore, that's why he's not any higher. But anyway, let me get into my number 2 second favorite chief engineer of Star Trek, and that is B'Elanna Torres. I actually was very strongly considered her for my number 1. And here's the thing about B'Elanna Torres. She's definitely just like all the other engineers on this list, is a very talented engineer. But she has skills beyond that. She was able to help out this robotic sentient life form, and that she knew nothing about. It's like an alien robotic life form that she managed to save and actually teach them how to procreate. But then she had the moral standing when she realized that they were at war with each other and causing this war, to go back on that and prevent them from having that technology. And also she created the slipstream drive. Granted, in an alternate reality, got Voyager destroyed, but not in our actual reality, so that doesn't count. But anyway, that Voyager could use to travel through. I mean, they knocked off 30,000 light years in their journey in a couple days because of that. Now, granted, it didn't last; it died out after that. Didn't get them all the way home, but that was a huge accomplishment. But the main reason I have B'Elanna Torres as my number 2 is because, getting back to the estimated time things, when Janeway says, when she said, this is going to take 6 hours, and Janeway's like, you have 2. She says, no! When I say it's going to take 6 hours, I mean 6 hours. I'm not exaggerating. That is exactly the amount of time I will need. And Janeway's like, okay. There you go. You can have your 6 hours. And that's why I like her. Unlike Geordi, who wouldn't stand up to Picard, B'Elanna stands up to her captain and be like, actually, I'm not lying. And unlike Scotty, who just makes shit up, and says, it's gonna take it's gonna take 10 hours, and really it'll only take him 2. She's straightforward, honest. It's like, actually, no. When I say 6 hours, I fucking mean 6 hours. And that is a great engineer. Anyway, so let me get into my number 1 favorite Star Trek chief engineer, and that is Chief of Operations, Miles Edward O'Brien. He must be some high up Chief of Operations. Anyway, Chief O'Brien, to be fair, he does kind of whine a bit like LaForge. But he doesn't necessarily, not in the same way. He sort of just grumbles to himself. He's like, oh, God. But he gets the shit done. He doesn't like go to the commander or to the first officer and be like, you gotta tell this person to back off like LaForge does. No, he just grumbles, he gets on with his life, he hunkers down, puts in some elbow grease, and he gets this fucking shit done. Now, the most impressive thing about Miles O'Brien is that he was able to take a Cardassian alien technology, integrate Starfleet technology into this alien Cardassian space station, and get it up to Starfleet standards. And again, he grumbled a lot along the way, but he fucking did it. And it was something a lot of engineers would not be able to accomplish. And on top of that, he was the chief engineer on the Defiant when they went out on their missions, and he helped get the Defiant through war times, keep those engines running, in the time when a changeling infiltrated the Defiant and took over its systems with this super advanced Dominion technology. And I gotta emphasize how much more advanced Dominion technology is to Starfleet's. He managed to find a way to get the damn things off their ship so that Defiant could regain control in order to avert war. And that is hugely impressive. And on top of that, he has all those other attributes that I mentioned before. He has very strong character, and he's able to, he was able to, willing to go in with Bashir to take on Section 31 in order to save their friend Odo and stuff like that. So he's a great guy overall, great engineer, huge accomplishments in engineering. So my personal pick for best Star Trek engineer is Miles Edward O'Brien. Anyway, that is it for my ranking of the 6 Star Trek engineers. Thanks so much for watching this. Thank you, Carrie091, for requesting this video, and for all those who support me on Patreon. It is extremely helpful. If you would like to support me on Patreon, you can go into the description below of this video, and there'll be a link to my Patreon page. You can donate anything, like even just $1 a month is very helpful. It'll get you access to my Patreon-only videos and other little goodies like pre-releases for some of my videos and schedules for my upcoming videos. And if you want to donate $10 or more, you can also request videos like this one. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. Be sure to check out my channel as I continue to cover many other Star Trek videos, as well as covering other shows like The Expanse and more. So be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all of that. And thanks a lot for watching.